Hey guys, so today I thought I would go through how I make a dried flower wreath. This is just a way to do it. There are many other approaches. I'll give you a quick demo of how I make up a wreath base, and then I'll show you how I construct my wreath with the dried flowers on it, and I hope you enjoy it. You can use any branches from a tree. You just want to find something that will eventually bend. So I've got this tree here. I've hacked at it quite a bit, so it's not as long and crazy wild as normal, but I found this very long piece. You can see how skinny this piece is. You can do thicker pieces if you want, but this tree is about the only one I've got on the property that I find good for my wreaths. And so just got my snips here, which normally I get, cutters or secateurs, but this is a thin branch. So I've got my thin branch here, and I will take all the leaves off, and I will leave this guy for a few days to dry. If you pull them off fresh and then you try to start bending them, they're gonna break. At least with this guy, you'll have to test what you've got. I know this tree, if I start to bend it while it's really fresh, it's not going to, there's just more of a chance for it to snap, which is not what I want. So after a few days, then I'll start to mold it into the shape that I want. So this is a wreath base I've made using that same branch that I showed you. You'll see that there's lots of branches in this. Because it's so thin, I have to use a lot more. It's a bit egg-shaped, but that's alright. When you start adding the flowers and foliage onto it, it doesn't really make that big of a difference. So as I said, there's a fire truck. Once this dries, I'll pull off the extra stems and take all the greenery off, let it dry for a couple of days, more like a few days. You have to test with your own trees and whatnot. Otherwise, one that I know for sure will work is tortured willow. So this one is one that I've already started. And all I do is I basically just weave this is months old, so it's going to probably need a little bit of help with my binding wire, which is totally fine. But I just start weaving bits and hoping that they catch, like so little bendy bits. I try and find a place where it'll stay on the stem I'm trying to get it stuck on. And it's struggling a little bit, so until it dries together, and sometimes you might not be able to take off your binding wire, but that's okay because you can always hide it with flowers. And I get my binding wire and I just twist it until it just stays in place. But if you've got bigger branches, you might not have to do this, but these are so thin. Alright, so it's together. I've basically got its shape. And you just keep adding pieces, weaving it in and out. Like you can see here how it's like crisscrossed through other branches. And I'll show you here, and I'll just keep intertwining them until they stay put. I'll even thread some through like this. Another one that's threaded through to keep it together. It's not really the easiest way to explain how to do that. Okay, so this piece, my last dish piece, I want this big piece to stay as close to the other stems as possible. So I've got it so that this piece is on top of that middle piece, and I'm just going to go around and then try and secure it by getting it stuck where I can. And then the first pieces are hard to start if your pieces aren't long, so just get your wire, your binding wire like I did here, and just attach it that way, especially if you're doing a full wreath, because you're not going to see it, and it'll add security in that way as well. Alright, so this is what that looks like, and that is basically from just a long branch like this. Leave it for a few days to dry and it'll become bendable, and you have to test the branches that you've got. Alright, actually might work on this one. To make a dried wreath, you will need a few things. So I've got my snips, I've got my paper flower tape, I've got my binding wire, which is just paper with some wire inside, and it's really handy. I love to use this. I also brought some wire, and which goes along with the tape in case I need to wire some stems like I have with the hydrangea. You will need, and you can literally pick anything that you want. There is no hard and fast rule, but there are, I guess, rules for a particular look you might be after. I like to do mine a bit wild. I might not use all these ingredients, and I will see how I go and whether I will use the whole wreath or half a wreath to construct this. If I do half a wreath, you just keep continuing all the way around the same way that I'll show you. So you can even use one of the same flowers, but a variation is good, at least 2 to 3 bits. Some grasses, like I've got this wheat, I've got the bunny tails, I've got this palm, dried palm. You can literally use anything, and it'll be up to your tastes and preferences, but different things, different flowers will make your pieces look interesting. So I've also got this leftover amaranthus preserved amaranthus that I might use. This is straight from my garden, which is just some grevillea. Hydrangea, as I've said, and some gum, status, which is one of my absolute favorite things in the world. And this is really cool too, some beautiful dried Christmas bush. So the best thing to do is to prepare your pieces. It'll just make life easier for you, and it'll be quick. Alright, now my pieces are ready. I'm gonna get started, and probably the best way to start is to plan. So I've decided that I am gonna do a half wreath. And the reason why I'm gonna do a half wreath is because it'll be quicker for me to do it for this video. And like I said, all you have to do is just keep going around. So I've got so many ingredients. I like to use some eucalypt to give my wild look and vibe, and also to line the back a little bit because the back always looks messy and uglier. The great thing about the wreaths though is this piece I wouldn't use in a dried bouquet as such, but I can use it here because it'll give me bulkiness, which is what I want. I want it to look a bit lifted, not so flat. And also, one of the best things about dried wreaths is there's very minimal waste. You can use almost every piece, and if you can't use it in this wreath, save it for something else. So all my little bits of flowers, all the little small parts that might, you know, fall off or something, I will dry them and store them so that I can use them again. Literally minimal waste. It's excellent. So I know that I'm going to be using the gum to create my wild look. The shape is just so beautiful, and it helps me to achieve that look. So I'm going to put that aside because I don't need it to be sitting on here. I've got some focal flowers, which are just bigger flowers, that I will be using. And I can either create a pattern of gum, maybe Banksia, maybe Status, maybe Grevillea, and then keep repeating that pattern, or I can make it all different in different spots. And your placement is going to be, say if you start on the right, your next placement's going to be veering towards the left. You can also create your pieces in clusters. So you can just select a bunch of things. So I've got this little sort of posy, and in fact I actually like this, so I might keep going with it. You don't have to do it in clusters. So I've got a cluster of a few things, and now I'm going to get my wire. I try to keep the wire attached to the spool for as long as possible. It just makes for a better, more secure wreath. So I'll get my wire. It's so bendy, it's so good in that way. And I'm gonna wrap it around. I might wrap it around twice, and then I'll just start to twist it. And this is why I love this wire. You just twist it until it's secure. And I go around, and you can also push in the wire so it kind of clamps the flowers in. So that's what my first bit looks like. It's attached. This is still attached. So that's me working in clusters, and then my next cluster I'll face it that way, and then this way and that way, and you just keep going around. And I'm doing it in clusters, but I'm also going to be adding random pieces so that I don't so I can add interest. And because I'm not always sold on something immediately, it might take me a couple of goes to figure out what look I'm trying to achieve. So again, wrapping that one piece around. So I've moved off my cluster to add in an individual piece. And now I'll add a little hydrangea. You can also squeeze them into the wire that's already there. You don't have to go around it again. A piece fell off, just slide it into a spot and make sure it's secure into the wire. And with the end parts, I kind of call them a handle. You can be as, you know, rough with them as you like. It's just, you know, this part you don't want to be too rough. So this is what it's looking like so far. Thinking I want to add some white, because I put this hydrangea sort of center, but now I'm clustering the status cluster onto the left hand side. You can have them facing and placed all in the same direction. It does change the shape. I find that going left and right gives you that wild look, whereas the other can be a bit neater. I'm going to add some more of this beautiful eucalyptus. And it's okay to have them, you know, sort of in front of it. So I've made some progress with it, and my phone stopped recording because it ran out of space. But this is what it's looking like thus far. I've added a cluster of the grevillea and then some of this beautiful preserved fern. I also put some eucalyptus at the back, and I did this so that you don't have to see too much at the front. You can see a little bit, it adds to the bulk, but it's not taking the attention away from details. That's just another little. And as I was cleaning up this side, I came up with this little cluster, so I think this will be my next piece. And so I'm going to follow my method, and I'm going to go over to the left. As you're going along, you also want to check the side profile there and the side profile here, because you don't want it to look empty and neglected. You still want it to look like every basically side, even though it's round, every side has something of interest, and face them a bit more inward, just to kind of, especially with something big like a hydrangea, maybe front on you only want to see a little bit, so if you put it facing inside the wreath more, then you'll be able to achieve that look, I guess. This guy, I'm just weaving up the bind that's already secured. I'm just going to see how he looks as I continue. And I'm coming to the end of my ingredients, which I might add more, or I might just leave it as is. See what happens. So my wreath is done. It's a half wreath, it's quite thick, and all I've done is at the bind, I've wrapped it round and round. You don't have to do it that way, you can just leave the legs exposed, but that's just something that I do. Check the sides to make sure there aren't any holes, but other than that, this is done. It's ready to be hung. You can add some ribbon to it,